cycle happens all around us, each and every day. From morning until night, water is in constant movement, whether we see it or not.
We will walk through the steps of the water cycle and find out what and why things happen. When we are finished, you will be able to think about why each step of the water cycle is so important. So get ready, we are about to take off on an adventure through the water cycle. The first place that water begins its journey is in collection. From puddles to pools to oceans, water begins its cycle by simply being stored. Can you think of more than just places outside? The water cycle even takes place inside. Collection can happen in many places indoors, but might look a little different because we don't leave puddles of water around our homes. However, the process is still the same. Where are some places inside that you can think of where water is collected? Sinks and bathtubs. Water on the inside of a container even goes through the water cycle. A gallon of water with the top on it can even be considered a place of collection. So how does water move from its collection area to the next stage of the water cycle? Well, you need a heat source. The most famous of all the heat sources? You guessed it, the sun. The sun takes us to the second stage of the water cycle, evaporation. The sun produces heat that warms our earth. When water is heated in its collection place, it turns into an invisible gas called water vapor. The water vapor will travel up into the atmosphere. You may be asking, what in the world happens to all that water in my house that you were talking about? Well, that water evaporates as well. Heat sources inside may include heat on the stove, an overhead or desk lamp light bulb, maybe even the air temperature of your home using your thermostat. Once a collection of liquid water in your home is heated, just like outside, it will become water vapor and rise up into the air without you even noticing. Watch how this heated pot becomes a great example of evaporation inside. So when we combine liquid water and heat, you get evaporation. Once water vapor has made it into the atmosphere, it can stay there until the time is right for it to move on to the next stage. The time is right when the water vapor cools back down on its travels. This is where condensation begins. Condensation happens when water vapor turns back into liquid water when it is cooled down in its environment. Where can we see condensation? It can be seen in many different ways. Droplets will condense on windows and mirrors, especially after a shower, on blades of grass early in the morning, or anywhere that is near them when this process occurs. Is that a cloud? It sure is. Clouds are formed when water droplets condense together high in the sky. The droplets that are formed stick together in the atmosphere until eventually they become too heavy to stay up there. This leads us into the fourth and final stage of the water cycle, precipitation. We all know precipitation is something falling from the sky and sometimes even giving us a day off from school. Precipitation is a form of water that falls back to Earth after becoming too heavy in the atmosphere. Outside, precipitation comes in a few forms. Rain, which is liquid water. Hail, which is frozen balls of ice, sometimes as big as a golf ball. Sleet, which is a mixture of rain and snow. And snow, which is frozen water coming back to Earth as flakes. Indoors, this process looks a little different. When we wipe off a mirror or shake the droplets from the side of a plastic container, we are putting the water back into the cycle so that it can begin again. Once the water hits the Earth, it collects and waits to be evaporated once again. If precipitation comes down in a frozen form, such as snow, it will eventually melt into a liquid and collect. So on the next warm day or sun-soaked afternoon, the water will heat back up, evaporate, and begin its adventure back through the water cycle. So let's review what we've learned today. We've learned that there are 4 stages of the water cycle: collection, evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. We've learned that the water cycle occurs everywhere, including inside of our homes. The steps are all the same, but they might look a little different than if we were outside. We now know that heat causes water to evaporate and change into a gas called water vapor. But cooler temperatures are what cause condensation, which is when water vapor changes back into a liquid on a surface. Lakes, tabletop flowers, snowbanks, running faucets, even this hippo's home. The water cycle plays a big part in keeping all walks of life going. Remember, water is necessary for all.